Ever walked into a place and felt like it was whispering stories? Sometimes those stories are beautiful, and sometimes they're born from pain. Join me as we explore the haunting legacy of Grand Haven, a place where secrets simmer beneath a veneer of elegance and a woman's past is about to rewrite its future. If you love stories that blend history, mystery, and a touch of the supernatural, then stick around and buckle up. Before we dive into Chapter 1, make sure to hit that subscribe button below and the bell icon to join the community so you don't miss out. Racist hotel rejects black female billionaire, but she shocks everyone when she returns as the owner. The rain was a relentless percussion against the slate roof of Grand Haven, each drop a tiny hammer blow against the silence of the night. The old hotel, a monolith of New England charm, stood like a sentry against the storm, its darkened windows like vacant eyes staring out into the blackness. It was the kind of night where the past seemed to bleed into the present, where whispers carried on the wind could easily be mistaken for the voices of ghosts. The kind of night, Evelyn Reed knew, where the most profound injustices could be hidden under a guise of old-world civility. She stood in the grand lobby, a woman carved from granite and grace, her tailored coat a deep ebony that seemed to absorb the meager light. At 52, Evelyn was accustomed to command, her success in the tech industry a testament to her sharp mind and unwavering will. But tonight, she was just another patron, hoping for a moment of respite after a long, grueling flight. Yet beneath the surface of her composure, there was an undercurrent of unease. The years had etched lines around her eyes, telling tales of loss, of struggle, and of a determination forged in the fires of adversity. A marriage that had ended too soon, children grown and now finding their own paths. Evelyn was no stranger to life's complexities. Tonight she was searching for a place to unwind, a space where she could escape the noise of the world. The man at the front desk, Richard Hayes, was the epitome of a New England gentleman, with his salt and pepper hair and impeccably tailored suit. But behind his polite smile was an undercurrent of something else, something sharp, something wary. As Evelyn approached, she noticed a slight tightening of his jaw, a flicker of disdain in his eyes that didn't quite mask his surprise. "Good evening," Evelyn said, her voice smooth as aged whiskey. "I have a reservation under the name Reed." Richard's smile faltered. He ran a finger down the guest registry, his eyes scanning quickly. Then he looked up, his gaze meeting hers with a coldness that belied his polite tone. "I'm very sorry, Miss Reed," he said, the words clipped. "There seems to be a mistake. We're fully booked." Evelyn raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her mind racing. She had booked a suite months in advance. It was not the season for a full house. "That's peculiar," she replied, her voice remaining calm. "I have confirmation right here." Richard took the printout and scanned it quickly. "There must be an error. We have no vacancies, and I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." His eyes darted away, his posture stiff and unwelcoming. It wasn't just the rejection that stung Evelyn. It was the casual, dismissive way he delivered it. It was the coldness in his eyes that echoed the many times she'd faced prejudice, subtle or overt. It was a wound that, she thought, had long healed. A wound she'd thought she'd left behind. But here it was, raw and bleeding once more. Evelyn didn't argue. She had learned a long time ago that there were battles that couldn't be won with words alone. Instead, she allowed a slow, deliberate calm to settle over her, pushing back the hurt and frustration, channeling it into something far more dangerous. She reached into her bag, extracted a card from her wallet, and placed it on the counter. "Perhaps there was a misunderstanding," she said, her voice even and unperturbed. "I'm Evelyn Reed. I would like to speak with the owner." Richard picked up the card and stared at it. He recognized the name of the investment firm, but seemed perplexed. I am the manager here, Miss Reed," he said, a hint of condescension still clinging to his voice. "I assure you, I have complete authority here." Evelyn's lips curved into a smile, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I see," she said, her voice dripping with barely concealed menace. "Then, I suppose we have nothing more to discuss." As she turned to leave, her fingers brushed against something cold, something old, a small, intricately carved key that had fallen from a hidden crevice in the desk. Evelyn pocketed it, an uneasy feeling washing over her, a sense of a story about to unravel. She walked out into the downpour, the rain seeming to wash away the superficial politeness and reveal the sharp, jagged edges of the injustice she'd just endured. She knew, deep in her heart, that she wasn't just leaving Grand Haven for the night. She was setting in motion a chain of events that would change its very foundation. The rain continued to fall, but Evelyn, inside her car, was as dry and serene as the storm itself. A slow, purposeful smile spread across her face. "You have no idea," she whispered, "who I truly am." The next morning the rain had subsided, leaving a bruised sky and a lingering dampness in the air. Evelyn sat at a table in a small, unassuming diner a few miles from Grand Haven, a steaming mug of black coffee warming her hands. The diner was a stark contrast to the polished facade of the hotel, a place where locals gathered, where the stories were told with a drawl and a side of hash browns. It was here, surrounded by the comforting aroma of frying bacon and the murmur of familiar conversations, that Evelyn began her investigation. She opened her laptop, its screen reflecting the faint sunlight, and typed in the name Grand Haven. She delved into its history, not just as a hotel, but as a landmark that had witnessed generations of lives, loves, and losses. She pored through old newspaper clippings, historical society records, and even a few obscure blogs, piecing together a timeline that revealed more than just bricks and mortar. It spoke of a family legacy, of a once prosperous dynasty that had slowly faded into a shadow of its former glory, all beginning with an act of cruelty and deceit. A hidden story of greed and prejudice that had spanned generations. Her fingers paused as she discovered an old article, dated nearly a century ago, detailing a scandal involving the hotel's then-owner, a man named Silas Hayes, and a young African-American artist who had worked there. The artist's name was Clara May, and the article spoke of her talent, her passion, and her tragic demise. Evelyn's heart clenched as she realized Clara May's family was never given an explanation, and justice was never served, even though it was clear that Silas Hayes had taken advantage of her, and later had her unjustly removed from the hotel. It was as if history was repeating itself, and it was clear that Evelyn's experience with Richard was merely a continuation of the same discrimination and injustice that had plagued the hotel for so many years. A picture of Clara May accompanied the story, and Evelyn's breath hitched. It wasn't just that she looked like a younger version of Evelyn, but that she was wearing a necklace with a strange symbol, almost identical to the design on the old key she had found in Grand Haven. The necklace seemed more than coincidental. It felt like it was meant to guide her to the truth. It was more than just a story. It was a personal connection to the injustice she had just faced and the legacy she had come to avenge. Evelyn closed the laptop, her mind reeling. This wasn't just about a bad experience at a hotel. It was about a cycle of injustice that had haunted generations, and she was now caught in its powerful pull. It wasn't just about her. It was about Clara May and the countless others who had suffered in silence, in the shadows of Grand Haven. She needed to know more. She needed to find that old journal, to read Clara May's side of the story. That afternoon, Evelyn returned to Grand Haven, this time not as a patron, but as a stealthy investigator. She parked her rental car a short distance from the main entrance and walked to the hotel from a nearby wooded trail, her black coat and sunglasses shielding her from recognition. The place seemed different in daylight, the polished facade less imposing, the air less oppressive. She walked past the manicured gardens and carefully studied the perimeter of the property. She wanted to know every nook and cranny, every hidden pathway, every forgotten corner. She finally found what she was looking for at the back of the hotel, a door that seemed out of place, tucked away behind an overgrown hedge. It was weathered and old, with a rusted lock that looked as if it hadn't been opened in years. It was the kind of door that whispered secrets, that hid away the most shameful truths. Her fingers tightened on the old key from the night before. It was an odd shape, different than the locks she had seen on the hotel. As she stared at it, she noticed there was a small engraving on the handle, nearly hidden from view. It was the same symbol she had seen on the necklace in the article, the one that Clara May had worn so many years ago. She felt a chill, not from the air, but from a sense of something supernatural, something not entirely explainable. As Evelyn held her breath, she inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a faint click, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow passage that led down into the depths of the hotel. The air that escaped the passage was stale, heavy with the smell of mildew and forgotten memories. She pulled out a small flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. This was more than a basement or storage room, Evelyn thought. This was a gateway into the heart of Grand Haven, where secrets had been buried for far too long. She took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness, the heavy wooden door closing behind her with a soft thud, leaving her alone in the silence of the past. Evelyn felt like she was not just entering a forgotten basement, but was diving into her own history and her own purpose. She was more determined than ever to seek out the truth, to uncover every dark secret, and to finally claim justice for herself and the countless others before her. The air in the hidden passage was thick and oppressive, heavy with the scent of dust and decay. Evelyn descended the narrow stone steps, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the darkness, revealing walls lined with rough-hewn stones and dripping pipes. The silence was broken only by the soft echo of her own footsteps and the occasional drip of water, each sound amplified in the enclosed space. It was like stepping into a time capsule, a place where the past had been meticulously preserved, or perhaps deliberately buried. The passage opened into a small, low-ceilinged room. It was a jumble of forgotten furniture, cobweb-draped portraits, and stacks of dusty boxes. In the center of the room, under a dim light bulb, was a sturdy wooden desk, its surface covered in yellowed papers and old inkwells. It was clear that this room had been abandoned long ago, but it felt like the presence of the past was palpable, as if the spirits of the people who had once occupied the space were still lingering. Evelyn approached the desk cautiously, her senses on high alert. Her fingers traced over the worn surface, her mind trying to piece together the fragments of history she had uncovered. She noticed a small, leather-bound journal among the papers, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. The same symbol she had seen on the necklace, and the key was embossed on its cover. Her heart pounded with anticipation. This was Clara May's journal, her voice from the past waiting to be heard. She opened the journal, her eyes scanning the elegant, handwritten script, a mix of both pain and beauty. As she read, Clara May's story unfolded, revealing a life of dreams and despair, of love and betrayal, of hope and loss. It was a story that echoed Evelyn's own struggles, a story of a woman who had dared to dream beyond the confines of her time, a woman who had been silenced by prejudice and injustice. It wasn't just a journal, it was a mirror reflecting Evelyn's soul, and a call to justice that made Evelyn more determined than ever. The sound of footsteps above made Evelyn quickly close the journal, her senses on alert. She extinguished her flashlight and moved back into the shadows and listened closely. She knew it was time to return to the surface. Her purpose was now clear. She wouldn't be hiding in the shadows any longer. It was time to bring her plans to the light, to reveal herself and the secrets she had uncovered. Back in the lobby, Richard Hayes was pacing anxiously near the front desk, his face pale and strained. He looked up, his eyes widening as Evelyn walked in, her posture radiating an air of confidence and authority. It was a stark contrast to the woman he had dismissed the previous night. The fear in his eyes gave Evelyn a perverse satisfaction. "Mr. Hayes," Evelyn said, her voice resonating with an icy calmness, "I believe it's time we had a more formal introduction." She looked around at the small group of employees who were silently watching and then continued. "Gather everyone in the hotel dining room in 30 minutes. This time, it's not a request." Her voice was calm, yet firm, and each word hung in the air like a threat. Richard hesitated, his eyes darting nervously around the lobby. I don't understand," he stammered, his voice trembling slightly. "I told you, I'm the manager here." Evelyn smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And I am the owner," she replied, her voice as smooth as aged whiskey. "I believe I have a few things to say, and it will be in the best interest of everyone here to listen." The words hung in the air, a thunderclap in the quiet lobby. Richard's face drained of color, his carefully constructed facade of confidence shattered. He looked around at the small gathering of employees, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. It was clear that Evelyn had taken control, and there was nothing that Richard could do to stop her. Exactly 30 minutes later, Evelyn stood at the head of the long mahogany table in the dining room, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. The employees sat in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on her, their minds racing to grasp what was happening. Richard sat at the opposite end of the table, his face a mask of fear and disbelief. Evelyn looked at each of them, her gaze unwavering and direct. "I'm Evelyn Reed," she began, her voice carrying a depth and authority that resonated throughout the room. "And as of this morning, I am the new owner of Grand Haven. I am also a direct descendant of Clara May, a talented artist who was mistreated here. I came back to right those past wrongs." A murmur rippled through the room, a mix of confusion, astonishment, and curiosity. Evelyn held up a hand, silencing the voices. "I understand this is unexpected," she continued, "and you may have many questions. But first, I have a few things that need to be said, a few truths that need to be revealed. I will no longer stand for the prejudice and injustice that this hotel has tolerated for so long, and anyone who disagrees with my decisions is free to leave." Her voice was firm, and her message was clear. She was not just buying a hotel, she was buying a legacy, and she was ready to change it. Evelyn paused, her gaze sweeping across the room, her heart pounding with a mixture of anger and determination. The silence that followed was heavy with anticipation, the air thick with unspoken questions. The storm had finally arrived at Grand Haven, and its very foundation was about to be shaken to its core. The dining room remained eerily silent, the air thick with anticipation. Evelyn's announcement had landed like a thunderclap, shattering the carefully constructed facade of normalcy that Grand Haven had always presented. The employees, a mix of long-timers and newcomers, sat stunned, their eyes fixed on Evelyn, their minds scrambling to comprehend the magnitude of her words. Richard Hayes, his face a mask of disbelief and trepidation, sat at the far end of the table, his gaze darting around the room as if seeking a means of escape. Evelyn's eyes swept across the room, her gaze lingering on each employee, assessing their reactions, their fears, their hopes. She knew that the changes she had in mind wouldn't come easy. They required not just a shift in management, but a fundamental transformation of the hearts and minds of everyone present. It wasn't just about changing the hotel's policies. It was about changing the very core of what Grand Haven had always represented. "I understand that you may be feeling confused and even skeptical," Evelyn began, her voice softening slightly. "But I want you to know that I'm not here to punish anyone for the past. I am here to create a better future, a future where everyone is treated with respect, where everyone has the opportunity to excel, regardless of their background or their history." She paused, letting her words sink in, her gaze settling on Richard. "Mr. Hayes, I will need your cooperation if you want to remain in your position. I expect full honesty from here on out. No more secrets and no more lies." Richard's face paled further, his eyes darting down to his trembling hands. I understand, Miss Reed," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I will cooperate." He knew deep down that he had no choice. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, and Evelyn held all the power. He realized now that he was just a puppet in a much bigger game, and it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions, his father's actions, and the dark secrets that had plagued his family for so long. Evelyn then turned her attention to Sarah Miller, the longtime receptionist, her gaze gentle but firm. Sarah had always been a quiet observer, her face betraying little of her inner thoughts. Yet Evelyn sensed a deep intelligence and a quiet strength hidden behind Sarah's timid exterior. "Sarah," Evelyn said, her voice gentle and inviting, "you have been at Grand Haven for a long time. I need your perspective. What do you think of these changes?" Sarah, startled by the direct attention, hesitated before answering. I've seen many changes over the years, Miss Reed," she replied, her voice trembling slightly, "but none like this. I don't know what to think." She paused and then continued. "I have always believed in the good of people, And if these changes will bring about more good, then I will be happy to help." Her eyes were wide, but her voice was steady, showing that there was a fire burning underneath her calm exterior. Evelyn nodded, a hint of a smile forming on her lips. "I appreciate your honesty, Sarah," she replied. "Your perspective is invaluable to me. I have a feeling that you have seen and know more than you show. I would love to hear anything that you know about the past. It might be useful." Lastly, Evelyn turned her attention to James Black, the talented yet unassuming chef, his gaze always fixed on the floor. "James, you are a talented and valued member of this team. I see that you have the same fire within you that I have. What are your thoughts on these changes?" she asked, her voice filled with encouragement. James hesitated, his eyes finally meeting Evelyn's gaze, a flicker of hope igniting in their depths. "I've always known that there was more to Grand Haven than what people saw," he said, his voice low but firm. "I've always dreamed of working in a place where talent is valued and creativity is encouraged. I will do anything I can to be a part of it." Evelyn nodded, pleased with James' honesty and passion. "Good. I am happy to hear that. I will count on you as well." She then looked around at everyone again, her gaze sweeping across the room. "I will also be making some organizational changes. I am giving each of you the opportunity to rise within this hotel. Every person will be treated equally, and I will be expecting hard work, dedication, and an open mind." Her voice was firm and clear. She was making it clear that she would not accept anything less than their best. The employees nodded in agreement, a few of them looking at each other with a mixture of hope and anticipation. Richard Hayes, his face still pale and strained, remained silent, his thoughts a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. He realized that Evelyn had truly taken control, and that he was just a pawn in her game. As the meeting adjourned, Evelyn felt a sense of satisfaction. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. She knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but she was determined to see it through, to transform Grand Haven into a place of justice, respect, and opportunity for all. Later that evening, Evelyn sat alone in the hotel library, surrounded by stacks of old books and journals, carefully poring over Clara May's journal. The words seemed to leap off the page, telling a story of dreams, despair, and a longing for justice. She discovered a hidden passage in the journal, a secret message written in code, which could potentially lead her to the truth behind Clara May's death and to the secrets hidden in the hotel's basement. As she reached for her flashlight and prepared to explore the secret basement once again, Evelyn knew that she was not just unraveling the secrets of Grand Haven, but also her own past, her own purpose, and the legacy that she was destined to fulfill. The echoes from the past had grown louder, and she was ready to face them head on. The stone steps leading down to the hidden passage were even colder tonight, the air thick with an almost palpable sense of foreboding. Evelyn descended, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. The discovery of the coded message in Clara May's journal had filled her with a sense of urgency, a feeling that she was getting closer to the truth, but also that danger lurked just around the corner. The hidden room was just as she had left it, the dust motes dancing in the beam of her flashlight, the silence almost deafening. She approached the desk and pulled out a small notebook from her bag, the coded message carefully transcribed inside. She studied it for a moment, her mind racing to decipher the symbols. They were strange and unfamiliar, almost like a language from a different era. Evelyn began to work, cross-referencing the symbols with the old books and journals she had found in the hotel library, a sense of focus and determination driving her forward. She was no longer just a tech executive or a descendant of a woman who had been wronged. She was a codebreaker, a historian, a seeker of truth, her mind focused and her spirit driven. Hours passed as Evelyn worked tirelessly, the only sound the scratching of her pen against the paper and the occasional creak of the old hotel settling around her. Finally, as the first rays of dawn began to paint the sky with streaks of pale light, Evelyn had a breakthrough. She discovered that the code was based on an ancient alphabet, one that had been used by the early settlers of New England. She translated the message, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and excitement. It spoke of a hidden chamber within the hotel, a place where Silas Hayes had concealed a dark secret, and a place where Clara May was last seen. The message also mentioned a key that was different from the one she had found. This key was described as having a heart-shaped handle, a detail that made Evelyn's skin crawl. She knew that she had to find this key, and she had to find that chamber. The air in the room suddenly felt colder, a feeling of being watched, and her instincts told her that something was not right. She quickly closed the notebook, switched off her flashlight, and moved to the shadows, her senses on high alert. Above, in the main part of the hotel, tensions were mounting. Richard Hayes, despite his agreement to cooperate with Evelyn, was struggling with his conscience. He was torn between his loyalty to his family's legacy and his growing sense of responsibility to uncover the truth. He paced nervously in his office, his mind replaying the events of the past few days, the fear that he was caught in a web of deceit growing with each passing moment. Sarah Miller, meanwhile, was slowly emerging from her shell of quiet passivity. Inspired by Evelyn's courage and honesty, she had begun to speak her mind more freely, sharing her thoughts and observations with an unexpected assertiveness. She spent hours in the hotel library, poring over old records and journals, trying to piece together the puzzle of the past. James Black was thriving under the new management. He had been given the freedom to explore his creativity in the kitchen, and he was relishing the opportunity to showcase his talent. However, he was also feeling a growing sense of unease, as he realized that the secrets hidden within Grand Haven might also touch his own family's history. He also couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was happening within the hotel. As Evelyn prepared to leave the hidden room, she heard the sounds of someone approaching. It was clear that she had been discovered. She quickly slipped the key to the next chamber in her pocket and went back to the stairs. Her footsteps were light but deliberate as she cautiously made her way up. She emerged into the main part of the hotel, finding Richard pacing anxiously in the lobby. His eyes widened as he saw Evelyn, his face pale and drawn. "Ms. Reed," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "there's a problem. Some of the staff have found an old record book, and it mentions the name Silas Hayes and some shady business practices. They are requesting to see you immediately." Evelyn nodded, her mind racing. It was clear that she had to act quickly and that she couldn't trust anyone at this point. "All right, let's meet them in the library," Evelyn replied. She knew that the secret basement had been discovered and she was running out of time. In the library, the tension was palpable. A small group of employees stood nervously, holding a stack of old record books, their faces a mix of concern and fear. Evelyn looked at them, her gaze steady and unwavering. "What have you found?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The employees hesitated.